Hello, I'm Mimi, and today I'm going to tell you about my art journey and the long, winding path I took to get to where I am today. I turned 30 last week, and it's also coming to the end of the year, so it seemed like a good time to share where I've come from, how long I've been doing art for, and just give a little bit of context to the illustrations and content you see on my accounts. When I dreamed of being an artist when I was little, I thought that my journey from the start to my dream scenario would be pretty straightforward, but of course that's not often how it works. Maybe your journey has been straightforward. Maybe your journey has been a little wobbly, or maybe you've taken a few steps back before you've been able to continue forward. But if you're anything like me, your art journey might be looking a little something more like this. Now, I'm not at the end of my journey, but I always wanted to be some kind of artist, to work for myself being creative every day, and have the opportunity to create art that I enjoy, and I'm really happy to say that that's where I'm at now. There's no need to compare your journey to anyone else's, because their path doesn't impact yours, and one is not better than another. And it doesn't matter if you feel your path is not direct, because mine certainly wasn't. So let me show you my long and winding journey to become an artist working for myself in my own business. First, we need to go back in time a little to the 90s, when I was growing up in England where I was born and loved doing arts and crafts. When I was young, I decided that when I grew up, I either wanted to be a ballerina, an artist, or an astronaut. The astronaut thing slipped away pretty quickly, and I didn't stick with ballet for very long. But I still like the idea of being an artist, even though I thought that only really famous painters could make a living from it. I made some pretty interesting illustrations, and my teachers described me as having a flair for creative work, which I think is kind of a nice way of putting it. My family and I emigrated to Australia when I was 11, and in high school I got to choose some of my classes and always chose the creative ones. I studied art and spent some of my free time drawing, but my creativity had become pretty rigid in my teenage years, and I mostly drew from reference because I didn't really know how to come up with my own ideas. I got good grades in school, and when it was time to go to university, I actually tried to get into a film degree but was rejected, so instead I did a mixed degree of some film subjects, some graphic design, and some art. I didn't really know what I wanted to do for a job, I just knew I wanted to do something creative. And I still didn't have a style or any kind of direction with my art. I considered myself as someone who was creative, but kind of felt like a bit of a fraud because I couldn't just sit and draw something from my head. I always had to use a reference. I ended up liking graphic design and knew it was a practical career with lots more obvious opportunities than straight visual art, so that's why I ended up putting my energy into most, even though you wouldn't know it looking at some of my early designs. And I wasn't ever really convinced it was what I really wanted to do. But I stuck with it for a while. Fast forward through 3 years of studying, and I had graduated university. I wanted to do some traveling, which has always been my second great love right alongside art. I was 20, had saved up some money from my retail job, and wanted to explore the world. So I went backpacking in Canada, where I ran a ceramics class at a summer camp, which was nice and creative, and then went to the US. I didn't do much art in this time, but I did start getting into photography as a creative outlet instead. I came home for Christmas, then I went to the UK for a bit to spend some time with extended family and maybe get a job there. But not long before that, I had met Dan in Brisbane, who, if you've been following me for a while, will know he's my current partner and edits all of these videos. So I didn't stay in England too long and came home for a boy and to look for a creative career job. I worked in retail for a while and looked for graphic design jobs, but still wanted to travel and still wanted to make a living from my art. So I left that job to try making money from my art, even though I had no idea what I was doing, didn't feel like I had a style or many skills under my belt. I made things that I liked, like cards and pins, and don't think I even sold enough to cover costs. I needed an income, so I looked for graphic design jobs, but everyone required lots of experience already. And so I ended up working as a travel agent because I liked travel, so how bad could it be? But I absolutely hated it and dreaded going to work every day, so I left that job after 3 months. I got into doing watercolors a bit more, and I liked that I could draw something from reference, but also have some looseness in the fluidity of the watercolor. Before I had found another job, and with not very much money but a huge spirit for adventure, Dan and I decided we were going to start cycling our way around Australia. Not on motorbikes, on push bikes. We didn't know how far we would get, but it was a cheap way of exploring and we liked the outdoors, so we cycled our way down the east coast of Australia for 5 months, had a wonderfully exciting and incredibly challenging experience, and then got tired and came back to Brisbane. I hadn't done any art while we were cycling, but thought as soon as I got back to a computer and sketchbook, surely I would build a successful art business. Dan's friend offered him a job at a creative agency in Sydney, so we moved there and I looked for work in anything I could get, thinking I would build an art business on the side. But getting a job ended up being much harder than I thought it would. I tried building something creative on the internet and thought I would start a cooking blog because I liked cooking, but I just wasn't committed to it and I didn't love taking photos of every step, so I guess it just wasn't quite the right thing for me. I tried doing some freelance work for people I knew, and then eventually got a stable job at a travel call center. I wanted to work on creative things on the side, but was so exhausted with my new job that I just didn't have the energy to. The small agency Dan worked for wanted to send him to Canada to work on a client project for a few months, and they offered to hire me as a part-time graphic designer for the project and send me with him, so obviously I took the opportunity. We were 24 and it was the first time I was properly using my skills from my degree, and I was keen to be out in the world traveling again. We spent about a year overall in Canada and England, working long hours under really tight time pressures, but learning lots of creative skills in graphic design and video editing that are coming in handy today, and overall had a wonderfully exciting and sometimes quite difficult experience. When that job finished, we did some cycling in the UK and then came back to Brisbane to work freelance. I started a freelance graphic design business, but it grew slowly, so I got a job in hospitality to pay the bills. I started an Etsy shop to sell digital prints and wanted to be able to make a living online with my art, but it didn't really work out like that because it's competitive and I didn't know what I was doing or stick with it consistently enough to learn enough about it. Instead, I made a nice bit of pocket money from it and went to work making sandwiches every day and tried to build my freelance graphic design business and grow my Etsy shop as much as I could. I made my nephew a simple little picture book so that I would have a project to teach myself some digital art, and I was pretty happy with how it turned out, but once the project was finished, I didn't do any more digital art for quite a long time. I was stuck in a constant loop of wanting to make a living from my art, needing to pay my bills with a steady job, and struggling to find my voice as an artist. I made lino prints, digital printables, traditional drawings, watercolor paintings, made trinkets with clay and felt, but could never find my own style that really stuck, and so I felt a bit lost creatively. How was I going to make a living from my art when I didn't know what my art was, or what it meant, or even why I was really doing it? So after a while, we went on a big hike in New Zealand, then we came back to Brisbane, rented a new apartment, and I had a new determination to make things work this time. I was going to freelance and I was going to make art, and eventually I was going to get my art skills together and I'd be able to turn my art into a business. I worked on my Etsy shop some more, but it didn't really grow very much, although it did hold pretty steady. I did some work experience in film and TV, and then went for an interview to do graphic design work on a film. I got the job and had a wonderfully creative and often challenging time working on feature films for a year. I got totally burnt out doing that and took a trip back to the UK to see some family and go for long walks to recenter myself. At 27, I still had this desire to make a living from my art and decided I wanted to give myself some time learning more illustration skills and how to create digital illustrations. I set aside some time and savings to teach myself some more art skills so that I could transition from graphic design to illustration. I started my Instagram account and participated in Inktober to try and make art a habit and develop some kind of consistent style. The habit didn't stick, and after Inktober I went back to just creating occasionally when I got around to it, like I always had, and only posted twice in the next 7 months. During that time, I was still doing freelance design work part-time and working on my Etsy shop. I started a second Etsy shop making social media templates and tried to get that off the ground. I was dreaming of being an illustrator, of having my own business that was reliable and that I could take anywhere in the world. I had big dreams, but felt like I wasn't any closer to achieving them than when I finished university. But that wasn't true. All of the twists and turns I had taken along the way had given me skills that now put me in the perfect position to create content. I knew how to do branding, to build simple websites, design documents and frames for video. I had some basic video editing and animation skills, and I knew how to prioritize things to get a lot done in a short amount of time. I had just never known what to prioritize before. Then the pandemic arrived. I was 28 and a half years old and suddenly had lots more time at home with nowhere else to go. And although I had less freelance work, I was in a really fortunate financial position to be able to still pay my bills for a while. I knew that I wanted to be an illustrator, and I knew that this was my opportunity. So I started illustrating. My mindset totally changed from waiting until I was successful to consider myself an artist to just telling myself I was one because I created art every day. From day one, I decided to illustrate 5 days a week, and I would post those illustrations to Instagram whether they were polished or not. I had to confront a lot of self-doubts about putting my art on social media and showing people the journey I was on. But once I confronted all of the worst-case scenarios, they didn't come anywhere close to outweighing the benefits. They were all about ego and being embarrassed and what if I'm not successful. And when I looked at them all, I realized that none of them actually mattered to me, and I didn't want them to hold me back. So I dove in wholeheartedly and drew every weekday, made content about my experiences, and really aimed to encourage others as much as I could. At first I was drawing traditionally because although I had dabbled in making some digital art, it wasn't something I was confident with, and I liked the simplicity of pencil on paper. Around September I started adding digital brushstrokes on top of my traditional art, and then I transitioned to doing fully digital illustrations. It took some time to learn how to get the effects I wanted in digital software, so my art at this point was more simple than it was with pencil until I got used to the drawing software, which just goes to show that progress doesn't have to be linear, where you just get better and better every day. Sometimes you need to take a step back to be able to move forward. I made an effort to experiment with different elements, ways of coloring, and different color palettes until eventually my style started settling into a rhythm. At this point, I felt like I had a good foundation in digital art that I could just keep building my skills in, so I kept practicing and kept drawing 5 times every week to improve my illustrations and try new things. Once I had built a community, I could start making commissions. I built a Patreon, a YouTube channel, and then an Etsy shop so that I could earn a living from my art. It took most of 2021 to take those income streams from being very small to being enough for me to live off. But with a lot of hard work and patience, along with a healthy dose of good fortune, I'm now able to solely rely on the income I make from my art. I still draw regularly, but I don't post 5 times a week anymore. Instead, I now spend some of my time drawing for paid jobs, which is pretty cool. And that's where I am now. It's been a very long and very winding journey to get to this point, and by no means is my journey over, but I've achieved a goal that I dreamed of 10 years ago when I finished university, and even 20 years ago when I was in junior school. I had some misguided attempts at making art businesses along the way that didn't work, and learnt a whole lot of skills that helped me make things work this time around when the timing was right for me. So what worked in these past 18 months that didn't work before? Timing. Part of it is about timing. Being home without distraction and without much work really made me realize I wasn't likely to have a better opportunity to give this everything I had. The timing was the catalyst I needed to push me over the edge and take myself seriously. Mindset. A big part of it is mindset. I decided that if I wanted to one day be an illustrator, I needed to be illustrating every day. So I shifted my mindset to allow myself to think that not only could I one day be an illustrator, but I could be one right now if I go and pick up a pencil and illustrate something. I recognized what was holding me back, and most of it was just fears or beliefs that I had about myself. So I made an effort to put them aside and clear the way for me to make progress with my dreams. I didn't actually need anyone else's permission to work on this for myself, I just needed my own. Expectations. I wasn't looking for a quick fix or any instant success this time around. I understood that realistically it could take years to build illustration into a job. I looked at it like a university degree, where I might spend 3 years working on developing skills, living on a student budget, to at the end have a new set of skills and experiences to get me a job in that field. I knew that sometimes it would be a lot of hours and work like a university degree would be, and that it was a big commitment. But I knew that the outcome was what I wanted, so in my mind I gave myself 3 years of putting lots of time and energy into self-teaching myself illustration and building content platforms that I could not only encourage other artists with, but also make a living from. Motivations. I was clear with my goals and motivations. I knew that ultimately I wanted to improve my art skills and build an illustration portfolio. It was important to me that my core goals were things that were fulfilling and didn't rely on any external metrics. So if all I achieved from this journey were these things, then I would still feel successful. After that, the goal was to earn a living from my art and build a community that I could share with. I also had some ground rules to guide my social media journey, and these have always been at the heart of what I do. They were: be genuine, treat other users with kindness, encourage the creativity of others, post 5 times a week, whether it's a quick sketch or a finished drawing, let go of expectations about my drawing abilities, and share what I learned to those who want to know. Luck. Now, I'm not adding luck in here to invalidate my hard work, because this business wouldn't have happened without giving absolutely everything I have to it. But you can have hard work and luck mixed in together. I'm in a super fortunate position and have a lot of privileges that other people don't have, and it's important to me that I acknowledge that. Without hard work, perseverance, and thousands of hours of effort, none of this art or content would exist. But I'm fortunate to have been in a position where I could even begin this journey in the first place. I know a lot of people out there are just trying to survive, but I also know that a lot of us are in a position to make our dreams come true and just don't give ourselves the permission to take the leap and commit to it. So if you're struggling to see results in your own journey, remember that life is messy. Things aren't always as straightforward as we'd like them to be. And if you make your goals a priority and stick with them, then eventually you'll get there. I'm not finished with my art journey. I'm just entering a new chapter, and I have no idea where this one will take me. Where are you with your art journey? Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then give it a like, leave me a comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time. Bye-bye.